Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April workshop meeting of the Springfield Township Board of Commissioners. How many Zoom attendees do we have? Thank you for our Zoom attendees, and thank you all for being here today. I wrote in my notes to acknowledge any holidays, and I still had Happy New Year in there, so I thought, well, I think it's a little late. However, there is still one yet Happy New Year. I'm Lao, and the Southeast Asian communities celebrate a new year in April as well. So one more Happy New Year, still salient in the notes. And happy Passover and Easter to all those who celebrate this week. We have a few presentations today. We're going to have one from Mr. Woodrow, our engineer, and Beth Mueller about from the Center for Water Protection. We're going to have a presentation from members of our EAC, Tyler Vogt, on fleet savings from our hybrid vehicles at the police department, and maybe some other EAC notes to come. And so before we begin, knowing those are the topics that are going to be put to the forefront, any other items anyone's here for today, so we can bring those forward. Great. Anything else? Great. Do we receive any public comments prior to this meeting? Mr. Manager. All right. And a reminder for those on Zoom that you may submit formal public comment prior to any meeting. If you're unable to attend in person, you can find that on the agenda page. A little bit of housekeeping for those who haven't been here before. We typically begin with the engineer's report. Then we'll tackle those presentations we may have and any issues that people are presently here for. And then any remaining public comment, and proceed through our formal agenda. With that, we have almost a full quorum. We're expecting Commissioner Morris soon. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Mr. Woodrow, our engineer, to the floor to start our meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just going through our agenda tonight, a couple of things on topics that maybe have some relevance. For your consideration on Wednesday night is the resolution for the approval of the 28 Grove Avenue subdivision. That's been through reviews from my office, Planning Commission. It seems like that plan is in pretty good shape. Andy and I prepared a draft resolution for your consideration. But any questions that may persist, happy to answer those if they're there. Pretty straightforward. Old house coming down, 2 new houses being built, Grove Avenue. Good stuff. Good question, Beth. That is some of the things that the building department looks at prior to issuance of a demolition permit. So they would have to have an asbestos survey done and a clear cert before, and that asbestos mitigated before the house could come down. So that is one of the things that we take care of through the building department. Yes.
So that was submitted with your agenda materials, and there was no defect of any asbestos containing substances. Yeah.
And just a reminder, that's part of building inspection or code enforcement.
Every demolition permit, regardless of if a subdivision land development being involved or not, but if you're going to take down any kind of a structure in town, that's a requirement.
Good question, though. Very, very important topic. Great.
And we know we have a member of the audience here. If there's anything you'd like to speak to, you're welcome to. Did you have something?
Mr. Morris?
Sure.
Great. Also on your agenda is consideration of the award of a geotechnical investigation study for our rec center. Susie's certainly aware we've been on bi-weekly meetings on the new rec center project, working closely with the architects and the construction managers. And one of the next things we need to put in place is an understanding of the conditions under the building. So as the engineers design foundations and that project moves along a little more rigorously through design, we're going to need some geotechnical investigation. And that's what that proposal on your agenda is for tonight.
So when we go through the responses.
Sure.
Yeah, so we did get 6 responses, and our construction managers are recommending the lowest bid that was submitted with the David Blackmore and Associates. They are significantly less costly than the highest bidder and less costly than the other four that were submitted. They also include surveying for utilities in the areas where they're going to be doing their exploratory work and sampling. And,
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a longer story we don't have to get into. Yeah.
Debate about whether that would be necessary or not, but that's included. They also have in there for two additional deeper borings, should they encounter questionable soils at some point. That's included in their proposal, whereas some of the others have additional costs associated. So,
Yeah, and this is a firm that we have worked with in the past on the projects. They're very well known, very active in the area. So I think that's a good choice if that's where oil thinks we should be.
so that'll be a consider on that.
Pretty significant difference. One and two.
Yes.
I don't know why, Jim, maybe busy, not busy, availability, location. I'm not sure, but that seems to be pretty standard these days. I've gotten even on road projects, a really wide variety of pricing. But good firm and we have experience with them, so I think they would be a good choice for us. Good question. It's not a long duration process. It is a little messy on the day they're drilling, not incredibly noisy and not incredibly deep it's not like a well. Similar looking piece of equipment, but it's, just in and out as opposed to, hours of drilling to get to 300 feet, whatever the well depth might be. Yeah. Good question. Also on the agenda for Wednesday night is our Terminal Avenue Storm Sewer project. This one has been around for a while. We've had some money line item budgeted for this project for quite some time. We went out to bid. We did advertising as best we could. We made phone calls, only got one bidder. Thankfully, that bidder is Plymar, a firm that is well known to us. They've done a lot of projects for us in the past. And their number was right on my budget estimate, which was fortuitous, I guess. I don't know. So I think they are in line. Again, we went through the bidding process and advertising process. And so if you guys are so inclined, I think that's a good project. A little bit different project than the ones we're going to talk about in a minute. This is more a collection and conveyance project, trying to mitigate the amount of stormwater runoff that gets to the intersection of Montgomery and Bethel and Pike. In the big storms, they flood out there pretty frequently. And so getting that water into a conduit system, getting it away from the intersection is really the goal of this project, as opposed to a water quality project that we've been talking about for so long. But again, Plymar, a good contractor. They've done many projects for us in the past. So I would recommend that award if you're so inclined.
For your benefit, I'm not sure if this is clear, so this could have been memo. Our grant is in now $404,561. The bid was $28,776. So we do have a match requirement, so we'll be in the right now instead of stuff. It tends to be the budget.
Okay.
Looks good.
Oh, just want
And that's the budget. of
0.3, right? That's what I said. So, inflation and tariffs and all that, yeah, my goodness.
When Tim does the estimates for a grant proposal, we know that we're not going to get the award that year, so.
I try and give it a little bit of room for that reason, Jim. Right. Just speaking of roads, Willow Grove Avenue, if you've driven down Willow Grove recently, I've seen it's in pretty bad shape. As
That's a,
four-wheel drive it is what we do. Spring season is here. We've reached out to Pico and their contractors. Recall that's a Pico project. They're obligated under the PennDOT permit to do that road repaving. Pico has subcontracted the paving work to Kehoe Construction. Jim Donifrey and Ian have a relationship with Kehoe, and they hope to be here by the end of the month to mill, repair, overlay, and
The month beginning of May.
something. Yeah. So hopefully, yes, exactly.
You wish.
Well, they were working on there sometime 2 weeks ago, maybe. Maybe I made that up.
No, they haven't.
Someone was.
Restore along the curb line, but they
Yeah.
did that back at the end of.
And that was Jay Overcash's obligation to restore the curb line. He took a little while to get that done. We got late in the season and Pico said, you know, it's too late, too cold. We've missed a paving opportunity. So hopefully by the time we get here next month, we'll be in good shape.
Any
Great.
other items?
I do. So recalling that over the last number of years, we've been talking a great deal about our permit that we have from DEP that allows us to operate our storm sewer system, our MS4 permit. And under that permit, we've got a lot of obligations to DEP, you know, things we have done, our Integrity Avenue Basin retrofit, Skyline Drive Basin retrofit, work we've done at Mermaid Park, all in order to keep in compliance with the terms of that permit. Over the last number of years, the Center for Watershed Protection has been working with me, filing reports, preparing studies, filling out all the paperwork that DEP requires of us. And I thought it would be worthwhile to take that component, that Center for Watershed Protection component, out from under my umbrella and put it in its own unique proposal and contract so the board could be more clear as to these things that we are doing and how we're accomplishing them. Beth Euler from the Center for Watershed Protection, a colleague, a friend working with me on dozens of projects, is here tonight to talk you through a little bit of what these obligations look like for 2026, 2027, and how we're going to accomplish all of what's ahead of us. So with that being said, Beth Euler.
Before we do that, I just wanted to wrap up 28 Grove, if you don't mind, since we're here, and I know we have an audience member interested in it. As far as I know, I don't have any issue with approving 28 Grove, and that's what I anticipate, just for your benefit. Not that you may not also be interested in water protection. Just want to be sure if there was any, anything that you wanted to know about that we would discuss. If you wouldn't mind, if you are going to speak, just come to the mic, please. Yes, I was going to say, for those who, just a little housekeeping, for those who haven't been here before, we do all this. And also when you speak, please speak in the mic, so to ensure that everyone here and online can hear you. And just remind you to say your name, where you live in the township.
Yeah, Robert Wise, I live on Bradford Road.
Yes, so anyways, I don't have any issue, but I just wanted to release this resident if we don't have any other issues.
Yeah, just so you know how the board operates. This is the workshop meeting, so they don't make any votes this evening, but they ask questions and they don't pursue.
Yeah.
The vote will happen on the sixth.
So we get a tentative approval tonight, is what you're saying as you go through. It's tentative. That you guys, yeah, I,
Consensus, that we'll know how to create the motion for Wednesday night.
yeah, I came to the planning commission and got berated. I was like, I thought I was going to be here
And I
for
think
10
those are the
minutes.
type of questions that.
I mean, as far as a resident, they were saying stuff about my family, stuff like
Well, I'm
that.
sorry.
You know, I thought it took it a little too far for a planning commission meeting. You know,
Sorry about that.
Inappropriate.
That's the intent.
but I appreciate you guys' help with this.
Sure. Any other questions for this resident and developer? All right, well,
I
okay.
guess I would just note, in looking at the draft resolution for Wednesday, and this was discussed at the planning commission level, that it's specifically written into the resolution that there will be the requirement to structure, discuss this testing and so it's something, you know, we're very aware of and sensitive to. We're making sure that that's written into the.
I think I'm pretty sure it was, you know, it was submitted to the township and stuff like that. And then the solicitor, the solicitor's report, it's in there.
So since it's already been done, I think that's what we're trying to be sure to report back to residents.
Yeah, he knew it was a condition that was gonna happen. He had to get it done anyway in front of the demolition process, not necessarily the approval process. However, did it anyway to just check that box and get it out.
Yeah, there was talk about stormwater. I think we went above and beyond with the stormwater with the beds and stuff like that to try to accommodate neighbors and stuff like that. You know, so we really probably weren't required to do any stormwater.
That reminds me, there was one thing, the shift of the property line.
I think that was dealt with.
That was dealt with, right.
That was outstanding. That was a request that people were reading, was that it is possible, but it's not required, but it's possible to keep leaders, informed of timelines around regulations so that they could just, if it would cause any disruption, they could be mindful of their own.
I think typically, I think I've met all the requirements that they've asked me, you know, as a contractor, I'm going to go in there and do the job I'm going to do. I think at this point, they asked for different things, accommodated them. I'm ready to move on.
And I think from a practical perspective, when the machine shows up.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be, we're going to have fencing there to protect it. I mean, you're going to know when it's happening.
The machine, you know, they make money with the machine, so it's not gonna sit for an extended period. It's gonna come in and someone do its work, it's gonna get out there. So that's about as close as we can get to telling them, you know, when it's gonna happen.
Sure. All right. If that's then I think Mike described it. It's tentative for now. We discussed it,
Yeah,
and then
totally.
Wednesday
Thank
will be the actual motion. So that would be probably what you want to see officially if you're concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All
All right.
right. Thanks a
so
lot for your help.
much. Bye.
Appreciate it.
All right. With that, going back to our presentation, sorry to interrupt. I just realized we sped through that without talking about it.
Not a problem,
Carry on.
bosses. So yes, stormwater, MS4, DEP, weight of the world on our shoulders.
All right. Thank you, Beth.
Thanks. Could you have a clicker or do you have you advance the slides or how's that work? Oh, funky font translation here.
Nothing. The environmental presentation is
Okay, it's popping there. Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come and to share about the MS4 program. It sounds like there's been a lot of talk over the years with Woodrow and Associates about Springfield Township's obligations under this program. And this is kind of just to serve as a refresher. Well, threefold really. As a refresher on the program, which was also meets part of your obligations under public involvement and participation, to have a presentation on the program and the update at a public meeting, to support, to basically give some background on what we're proposing to assist the township with, and also to fulfill the pollutant reduction plan public participation obligation. So I'll go through all of that in detail through this presentation, but also just to introduce myself. My name is Beth Euler. I'm the Pennsylvania Director at the Center for Watershed Protection. We are a national nonprofit organization, but I'm based out of Southeast Pennsylvania. So, people don't think of nonprofit organizations doing consulting, but we do. We work with local governments. We don't work for, private developers on that side, but we'll consult with, other nonprofit organizations providing technical assistance, local governments, that kind of thing. We also do a lot of grant funded research. We have educational programs. We have a membership program, things like that, just to give you a little sense of who we are. And we also host a national stormwater and watershed conference. If you're interested and want to come down to Charlotte, North Carolina next week, we're going to do that and nerd out on some stormwater management. Okay, so moving forward, I think I might have clicked the button by accident, so hopefully it still advances. Here.
It'll jump ahead by 4. Yeah.
No, but we are having a field trip to a whitewater rafting center. It's a national whitewater rafting center. So that's one I signed up for
Oh, that's
during the
cool.
conference. But yeah, so there's a lot of that type of thing we did Puerto Rico last year. That was where our conference location was. So that, yeah.
I'm getting involved with this.
You need more invitations.
Yeah, right. You know, it's see, there's some incentive, although I feel like our attendance for the sessions were a little bit low. Okay, there we go. It's going. Now I'm not going to get too click happy here. So just a little bit of a background on the permit program, because we have a lot of acronyms, just like any other kind of, I guess, discipline, profession, regulatory program. The NPDES MS4 permit program stands for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program. And so kind of the goal is to recognize stormwater as a source of a point source pollutant. So like an outfall where discharges from your township owned roadway is where your kind of regulatory impetus is, as any other stormwater or any other point source pollutant. So, we have construction site stormwater permits. So we have, any earth disturbance that's over an acre has to have an NPDS permit or NIPDES, depending on who you are and where you're from, with the acronym, the way you say the acronym. So it's a federal program that's administered by the Environmental Protection Agency. So it is, a federal permit program. And DEP administers it and enforces it in Pennsylvania, and develops a program that's consistent with the federal code of regulations. And then that permit program comes down to the municipality to implement. And not every municipality in the state has one, but I would say about close to 40% of the municipalities do. It's based off of population density from the U.S. Census Bureau. And, this part of the state happens to be heavily regulated by this permit program because we're heavily populated. And then the township, has to enact ordinances and implement a permit program that then, brings the residents into it, and so when it comes to the different elements of the program. So it is an unfunded mandate, which is not one of the most popular terms but the vast majority of the program doesn't have, a federal state funding source that's dedicated to implement it. So it's kind of up to municipalities to figure out how to do that. Why it's important, I like to put this slide up in the beginning because really we're trying to protect our water resources, whether you like to, swim in it, fish in it, or you drink water. The interplay of surface water and groundwater are heavily connected, no matter where your water source is coming from. And I'd be willing to bet that you're pulling drinking water from a surface water source out here as opposed to groundwater for the most part, which, tends to also impact the cost of what your water utility is going to be. The more they have to treat it, the higher the cost of the drinking water utility. So I also mentioned that it's a requirement. So that's another objective. But also other motivations for doing it include, the fact that one of the most frequent complaints that municipalities get are surrounding stormwater management, stormwater runoff, drainage, erosion and sediment control, soggy yards, drainage getting directed onto somebody else's property. So you want to make sure that you're doing as much as you can as far as your obligations are concerned, so that you know how to respond to these residents that call and complain about these issues. I apologize for the squishingness, some formatting issue or font translation between what I gave and whatever the font bank that you have in your computers are. But so this looks a little bit more busy and overlappy than it would normally. But there are 6 minimum control measures, and I'll go over all of them real briefly. And the requirements on the right, the total maximum daily load and pollutant reduction plan and pollutant control measures, those vary per municipality. So every municipality has the requirements on the left, those basic minimum control measures. On the right, that is dependent upon how many stormwater discharges you have to streams that have designated impairments for certain things like siltation, nutrients, under pollutant control measures, PCBs, and pathogens. So in terms of, and then also a total maximum daily load, which is whether there's an actual EPA approved report that establishes that limit. So you all have probably heard a lot about the Wissahickon Creek and the importance of the TMDL there, and all the effort that's going to basically make sure that the township will achieve the long-term objectives as part of the Wissahickon Creek TMDL. And what we're going to be talking about at the tail end of this presentation is what the township obligations are to achieve the short-term objectives for the TMDL, which isn't included as part of that Wissahickon Creek coalition or collaboration that's working towards achieving the long-term objectives. It's going to be considered in it. It's going to help achieve those long-term objectives, but you still have to do the short term. So first one is the public education and outreach program. And these are just the standard elements. So every minimum control measure requires a written program that has to be reviewed annually and updated. Includes one educational item per year and 2 distribution methods per year. So, the township handles this by the website, by the newsletter, by social media, things like that, by partnering with local organizations. And so there's also a lot of overlap between that minimum control measure and public involvement and participation. Also requires a written program. And this is where partnerships with like Wissahickon Trails comes in, and other watershed organizations. So another requirement is that the township has to present information at a public meeting like this once every permit period, which is a 5-year permit cycle. We recommend we talk about it more than that. And I'm sure Tim has been talking about it more than that over the years, just because it is a source of, the township has to pay for it. So it's good to be open about these costs and its importance in improving and kind of maintaining water quality. So we do report to DEP annually, and that's some of the things that we've been helping Tim's group with is the annual reporting process, and that's due to DEP September 30th. It needs to be made available by request, and that's part of the public involvement participation process. And anytime a stormwater ordinance is updated, then also has to go through the public participation process, which is standard for any municipal ordinance anyway, but it's a requirement of the permit. So MCM 3, minimum control measure 3, is illicit discharge detection and elimination. Really, the bulk of this is requiring that we have all of our stormwater infrastructure mapped. And why is it important to have it mapped? It's really important so that we understand the source of a potential illicit discharge. And I guess the big question, and I think that the next slide will cover this, is what is an illicit discharge? But it's anything that's not stormwater that's entering the stormwater system or streams. Basically, there's a very short finite list of things that are allowed to enter the storm sewer system that isn't considered pollution. So things like grass clippings and leaves, that's not supposed to be going into the storm sewer system. So not only is it a nuisance when it comes to maintenance from a public works perspective, but it's also a water quality issue. And so we can enforce, when residents are blowing leaves into the streets and things like that, that's not acceptable from an MS4 perspective, and your stormwater ordinance covers that. There's specific educational outreach that's required related to illicit discharge detection and elimination. And that is so that people know what to do when they see an illicit discharge. They need to report it to the township. If there's an immediate threat to safety or human health in the environment, then that needs to go to DEP, and the township can help to direct it to DEP if that is necessary. So this is just a screenshot of Springfield Township's, this is the public-facing mapping platform that we have basically shared with DEP so that we don't have to submit a static map every year and update it, because we always are updating the storm sewer system mapping in coordination with Public Works. Public Works uses a program called Tracer, which some of you probably have heard. That's the internal facing aspect to this that's not accessible to the public. We also used this mapping when we updated the pollutant reduction plan for approval for DEP. So DEP looked at this. So a lot of what you're looking at here has the proposed best management practices to meet that. So construction site runoff controls minimum control measure 4, and this really is satisfied through the delegation agreement that DEP has with county conservation districts. So there's not a lot of responsibility from the municipality here, other than when you get a land development that's submitted into the township that's over an acre of earth disturbance, that you don't issue any building permits or any other kind of permits prior to them getting their NPDS permit for construction site activities. So that's really the only thing you need to do, and making sure that you get the conservation district in the loop, keep them in the loop with those land developments that are greater than an acre of earth disturbance. And similar for minimum control measure 5, this is post-construction stormwater management, new and redevelopment. A lot of that delegation agreement with county conservation districts satisfies this requirement. But the big piece here for the township and that we're going to be working on as part of our work with Tim's group is making sure the township has an up-to-date inventory of all the post-construction stormwater management VMPs, best management practices, the existing basins that were constructed as part of those NPDS permits for construction activities. So land developments greater than acre of earth disturbance that were approved after 2003. So the townships were required to make sure that they're being properly operated and maintained by the responsible party. You're not responsible for doing the actual maintenance, but you're responsible to make sure that whoever is responsible for doing it is doing it. And so we're going to be developing and implementing a program as part of that work, which is something that, DEP, it's been a requirement for a while, but it's one of those things DEP understands it takes a long time to get to the point of actually implementing that program. So we're getting to that point now. Another thing that's good about going through this process is that there's a potential that this could possibly help with achieving pollutant reduction plan obligations. We could possibly go back and revise it, lower the baseline loading if we have all of these things inventoried, and then, possibly reduce the number of projects that the township has to do. So I think this next slide is really just an example of a different stormwater BMP inspection program that we've helped to develop for New Hanover Township, and they continue to evolve how they implement it. And so there's a lot of different options when it comes to that. So the last minimum control measure is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Again, requires written programs. And this is really where, the permit requirement is to make sure that whatever the township's operations are isn't directly contributing to pollution. So your public works facilities, making sure that salt storage is not contributing and running off salt into the storm sewer system directly. These aren't pictures from Springfield Township. Making sure that leaks and spills are cleaned up right away and not allowed to run off into the storm sewer system or streams. Making sure that certain things are stored under cover, that materials are labeled, things like that. And DEP will inspect that when it comes to it's supposed to be a once every 5-year inspection. Turns out, I think we just received our first visit, I don't know, this within the last 2 months, something like that. So, we actually always use Springfield Township as a great example of a public works facility because you have like the best that we've seen anyway so far, and that I've seen as far as I've visited in Pennsylvania, especially with like the car washing facilities and the secondary contain. Like it's pretty good. So yeah, Springfield is lucky to have those resources. And then an annual employee training, which actually my colleague Julie just walked in. Sorry, with pictures. We've been helping Tim with some annual training, and we'll do a multi-municipal training with all the municipalities that Tim works with to, for a cost efficiency, get everybody together. And actually Springfield's hosted here, as well already at one point. So, and that's always good to get everybody together and exchange information as well, not just us talking about the same things over and over again, but, people can share experiences. So talked a little bit about this on the slide that was all squished, but to talk about it a little bit more, there's basically 2 different types of requirements that are for addressing stream impairments. And what is a stream impairment or a total maximum daily load? It's basically when stream isn't achieving its water quality standard. We set a water quality standard, and when it's not achieving that for one or more reasons, DEP has to create an assessment every 2 years to submit to EPA about the water quality report in Pennsylvania. And they're designated as impaired if not. So we have we have two things, total maximum daily load plans and pollutant reduction plans. I'm lumping them together. Those are for sediment and nutrient impairments. That's when we're talking about actually designing and implementing projects. Shovels in the ground to reduce sediment and nutrients in our streams. And it's not necessarily to address sediment that's laying on the ground. We're not looking to build facilities to contain sediment runoff, right? We're looking to build facilities to hold back unmanaged stormwater from impervious surfaces that otherwise would just be eroding our stream banks. And this eroding stream banks is really the source of the sediment and nutrients that we're trying to address. Because you probably think, well, where's all this sediment coming from? We do street sweeping, we do this and that. And you don't walk outside the door and see sediment laying on the ground. That's not what we're trying to address. We're looking at, the historic development that hasn't had any stormwater management over the years. So it's almost like a mitigation type exercise. Whereas the pollutant control measures in this permit period is for streams that are impaired for metals from pH, from abandoned mine drainage. Obviously, we don't have that in this area. Pathogens, which we do have, and then PCB impairments, which we also do have, the Schuylkill River. So this is more of a research and enforcement exercise, not as costly as the pollutant reduction plans, but still it's a requirement that needs to be implemented. So summary of the pollutant control measures, we're going to be proposing to work on this year because they're due this year. The storm sewer shed map. So the storm sewer shed map, basically what we need to do is identify all of the township's outfalls that discharge to streams that are impaired for pathogens and PCBs within 5 miles of that source of impairment. And then we delineate basically the drainage area to those outfalls. The DEP likes to call it a storm sewer shed. Because it's not a watershed, it's a storm sewer shed. And then the next step in the following year is going to be to look for the potential sources of PCBs and pathogens within those storm sewer sheds. And if we identify any potential or known sources, then we'll investigate them. And investigating, this is further down the road. We'll be like sampling at the outfall during dry and or wet weather, depending on the results of the source inventory. And then we'll need to report to DEP. And if we do determine there's any kind of potential pathogen issue, the DEP wants to see an animal waste ordinance enacted if you don't already have one enacted. So that would be just making sure that people are picking up pet waste on public property. Pollutant reduction plans. So this is your Wissahickon Creek TMDL. I guess technically it's the Plymouth Creek portion of it that drains directly to the Schuylkill River is your PRP portion, but we kind of lumped it all together when developing the PRP that complies with the current regulations. So basically what it is implementing projects over a 5-year period that will reduce the pollutants to, it shouldn't say it's okay, it says impaired stream or Chesapeake Bay. So like I said, in this case, the impaired stream is going to be the unnamed tributaries to the Schuylkill River on the south side of the township. It's got to be 10% sediment reduction over that period of time. And those are some examples of projects that can be done. Through our experience, the most cost-effective projects tend to be basin retrofits and stream or floodplain restoration. And so that's really what we looked for. Also new basin facilities. So, and then total maximum daily load plans, basically the same thing, except for there's a long-term objective. So we have to reduce sediment by 10%, but then there's also the long-term objective, which in the Wissahickon Creek TMDLs, that's a very complicated situation, as you all probably have been aware of, but there's, the alternative TMDL. So, so the township's a part of that. So the long-term objective will be addressed through that plan. So there's not going to be another 10% sediment reduction after that, but you'll have to make sure we do the 10% for the short term for now, but through the same means. And there's Julie right there at a stream restoration project. So Springfield's TMDL / pollutant reduction plan. So I don't know if you see here, this is the watershed boundary, and there's a teeny little bit that drains to the Schuylkill River, and that's the PRP portion. And the rest of this ultimately is the Wissahickon Creek, except for I think this little teeny bit goes in the other direction, which I don't believe there's actually any MS for infrastructure there. So we didn't even include that in the PRP. So what does the PRP have? I just try to put a high level overview. The full PRP is in your packet. We're calling it a PRP, but it also addresses the total maximum daily load for sediment. There's basically there's 15 projects that proposed. Out of those 15, the township has already implemented 4 of them. So I should have had that in like bright, like bright yellow, kind of, Springfield's been progressive in implementation even prior to getting the pollutant reduction plan approved. So that's great. 15 projects is a lot. However, it's not necessarily off scale from what the neighboring municipalities that are in the Wissahickon had to do for their short-term objectives. So, it is kind of a standard for that. So I'm showing kind of some examples. These are not the Springfield projects, but just more recent projects from actually one of the projects that Tim and I worked on together.
Do you have a bioswale plan?
There is a bioswale plan somewhere.
Where's that?
I don't know off the top of my head. Tim might remember. I'm not sure.
One of the things we did at Mermaid Park, if you recall, there is a very steep bank channel that runs through the park and very eroded, a lot of sediment coming off of those steep banks. We did stabilize those with some grow logs and some plant vegetation. A little more work to do there to make DEP happy. But that was one of the areas we started looking at to help mitigate some of that sediment runoff from our waterfalls. Yes. That's the bioswale.
I think it is the bioswale, but I'm not really sure. We've been back and forth with DEP on how to credit that project. Yeah. And so we're still in the process of that.
Yeah, that is a dry detention basin. So if you recall, the former condition of Skyline Drive was just a completely mowed lawn. And obviously, grass clippings, lawn fertilizers, road salts, all just kind of washed right through that basin out what was a very large outlet structure and into the creek. And so that grass was taken up. There was some bendy soils, some vegetation planted. It's going to take a couple of years for that vegetation to really establish and become dense. But it is pretty healthy right now. And I haven't been there this spring yet, but last fall it was looking pretty good. And so the more dense vegetation that we can get to grow in the bottom of that basin will help with, evapotranspiration, filtration, and, help clean the water as it leaves the facility.
Yeah, and I will say we worked with Tim and township staff to identify project locations that weren't, some of them are already identified in the previous version of the pollutant reduction plan. They're more intimately familiar with the geography of the township, and we obviously try to prioritize township owned property as much as possible, just for the ease of implementation and cost effectiveness as well. So, and also looking for when proposing projects on private property, obviously there's a lot of questions involved with that. This pollutant reduction plan isn't set in stone. It can be changed at any time. We might have to go through another public participation process depending on the nature of the changes, which would just be this meeting and publishing a notice in the paper again, and basically establishing a 30-day public comment period. But it's not like you're adopting this pollutant reduction plan and it's set in stone. This is just a public presentation to accept written and verbal comments from the public. We're at the end of our 30-day public participation right now. So I just wanted to mention that. And when looking at proposed best management practices on private property, considering not, an individual resident, mostly looking for like an institutional owner or something like that. So this is summarizing where we are with it. So the 30-day public comment period began March 12th. And so we're nearing the end of that. The plan is actually in your packets, and it's available by request and on the township website. And if, it's okay with the board, this would be where we would accept verbal and written comments for this pollutant reduction plan to satisfy that requirement. And then what we would do once the public comment period ends, we'll address those comments and we'll submit them to DEP. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to necessarily have to make changes to the plan, but we'll definitely address them. It might just be an explanation, maybe not. I would say 99.9% of the time that I've done these, we haven't received any public comment, which is, that's just how it is. And, but, we'd be happy to address them if we do receive them. And then the next step is implementing. So that the township's already started implementing over the years, and that would just be continuing to implement. So how do we pay for it? This is really, there's a lot of ways to pay for it. And it sounds like I heard a grant mentioned earlier. So the township's well versed in grant money. Pennsylvania has a lot of state grant options. We have low interest loan program called PennVest, which is the state revolving funds. National Fish and Wildlife Foundation has some funding. There's the stormwater fees and authorities is always an option. I know some municipalities don't want to entertain it, but when we hear back from a particular court case, I know a lot of municipalities that are chomping at the bit to adopt a stormwater fee to help implement these programs. So just some resources out there, and we'll certainly work with Tim to keep them to the top. Also have kind of a catch-all program called the local share. The local share program through the PA Department of Community Economic Development that can basically pay for almost anything. Most people don't elect to pay for stormwater with it because of that, but it's out there. So what's next? Like I mentioned, implementing the total maximum daily load and pollutant reduction plan BMPs, which really would be, Tim leading the way on that, and we'd support him as need be. We're proposing as part of our support services to the township to continue on some of the minimum control measure activities, which are the outfall field screening training with township staff. So making sure that township staff gets out there, is looking at the outfalls, meeting that minimum requirement as part of DEP. And then what else do we got? We had we have to assess for priority areas. So we're supposed to be identifying where the outfalls are the most. So say the township has, I don't know off the top of my head, like 130 outfalls. You don't have to inspect those outfalls every year or screen them every year, but you need to do it more frequently if they're downstream of an industrial activity or an area that's habitually reported as potential contaminant or something like that, an older infrastructure area, things like that. And then the BMP inventory, we're working on finalizing that and developing a compliance program for that. Of course, will help with annual reporting and then the pollutant control measures. And then further down the line, we'll be updating the stormwater ordinance, which is technically required to be updated by September 30th, 2028. So we have a little bit of time on that. And I think that was it. Craig's like, you're done.
Mike, when was the last time we updated? Since time.
Yeah, but there was a time when all of these stormwater obligations kind of came in vogue, 2010 timeframe. And a lot of ordinances were developed around 2012, that kind of.
Yeah, so there was like an update / adoption. I think the last update was 2012, and then this is the 2022 model ordinance, but because your permit was issued later than like most of the general permits, then it's you're still looking at the 2022 model. There's a slight chance that the next model with the next permit will be out by the time we update yours, so we could just possibly use that as a model and kind of get ahead of the curve, because there's also a new statewide stormwater manual that's going to be coming out concurrently. So, but we won't hold our breath for that because sometimes it takes time.
But what the public should recognize is these obligated ordinances with each new version kind of ups the bar as to what minimum obligations occur. So for a homeowner who is putting in a new back patio, a swimming pool, whatever it might be, the obligation is to deal with this runoff that's more and more severe with each of these passing ordinances. So it's something to be aware of. You know, it's an obligation. We don't like to impose that on residents, but it is something that we've got to do. So just to be aware.
And this is a nationally demanded obligation, not
That is
just,
correct.
not just something the state is doing, not just something we are doing.
As a matter of fact, we know that EPA is pushing hard on Pennsylvania because of the, how many 5,200 municipalities, whatever there is in the state,
2,300.
whatever it is.
No, 25,
yeah.
yeah, 2,560, I think.
It's a lot like herding cats. And so it's very difficult for Pennsylvania to compete with somebody like Virginia, who's got, 5 counties. And so they deal with stormwater at a county level, whereas Pennsylvania deals with it on the township level. And so trying to get everything organized. And so Pennsylvania is a bit behind some other states who don't have all the complications that we do.
Well, I mean, another thing that may happen too is that Montgomery County, they've been undertaking a countywide stormwater planning effort that's not necessarily consistent with Act 167, but they, all counties have to do stormwater management planning consistent with Act 167, which does require a model ordinance. Usually, right, it's either on the watershed scale or the county scale. And I think Montgomery County did receive funding in the last round of DEP Growing Greener Plus, which was, I guess, January it was awarded. And so I think, they are going to be looking towards doing that countywide update. So there may be a countywide model that, hopefully that we'll know about that before we go and, make the update to the township's model for consistency with the MS4 permit requirements. So we'll be aware of kind of all of those moving factors.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions is how do we compare nationally? And is there a large gap between how successful we are versus the theoretically most successful municipality in the country? But I mean, that seems like
Well, you know what,
such,
Susan,
doesn't
everybody's
seem
so
like an
different.
apples to oranges
Apples
comparison.
to oranges, because, in the Northeast, we've got a lot of water that we need to deal with. In the Southwest, they don't have any water. And so their water goals are much different from ours. But I think that, Pennsylvania has been pretty progressive, especially with the Chesapeake Bay litigation that occurred. When was that? 2005? Whatever that was. Chesapeake Bay Foundation sued the EPA and said, you guys are not imposing all the provisions of the Clean Water Act. And so Pennsylvania had to step up their game a little bit to respond to that lawsuit. So Pennsylvania is
I say we're definitely more on the progressive side. Now, as far as actually being able to implement, because of our local government structure, it's challenging to, we have varying levels of compliance right now. And I have I know some municipalities like Lancaster County is pretty much all of the municipalities there have achieved their pollutant reduction plan goals already. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. Some of it's well, that, and also, they don't have municipalities that are as densely urbanized, so there's a lot more rural municipalities that have less obligations. But yeah, we got more people that are bought into the movement there, and the fund, there's a lot more sources of funding because it's Chesapeake Bay too. So, so there's that. And then we have a lot of, there's a lot of more stormwater fees out there that helps with ease of implementation too, believe it or not. And even in the rural municipalities. And so I think there is a little bit of a lag, in some areas of the state, but yeah, it's so varying just throughout the state of Pennsylvania. But yeah, I mean, we have people from Utah that come to our stormwater conference that have stormwater fees and have, stormwater programs, but they might not, they still are investing in that, even though they might not have the pollutant reduction plan requirements where they have, significant obligation there. But yeah, so yeah, there's a huge varying for sure.
And even within Montgomery County, we gave a slide with New Hanover Township, but dramatically different than New Hanover Township than we did.
Yeah, they have there's
based on the amount of development that occurred unregulated in Springfield over the years versus New Hanover.
50%, about 50%. Only the southern half of their township is actually within the urban area, so covered under their permit. Whereas the Springfield Township is an entirely urban area, so you're entirely regulated, their pollutant reduction plan obligation was one stream restoration project.
Then you mentioned the number of municipalities are not required to really based on density.
Yeah, so the urban area is population density spatial layer from the census. And it's basically like a blob going out from all of our urban centers in the country, really. But this in the state, it would be like there's a blob coming out from Pennsylvania. There's Philadelphia. That's what I meant. How'd you know? I was going over here. And then, there's, then there's Altoona, even, Pittsburgh, there's Allentown, all that. So if there's a piece of that spatial urban area that extends within your municipality's jurisdiction, you're automatically put on the hook as being regulated. Now, you may qualify for a waiver if you meet certain population thresholds, but, Springfield Township would never qualify for a waiver because of the, and being entirely urban area. So if you look at this is the stuff that usually bores other people, but I like to put in my presentation. So like, Beth, take the state map off of the presentation, but it doesn't look like there's that many MS4 permits when you look at the map of the regulated communities, because it's all centered around the urban areas. So spatially, it's not that much. If you look at a map of the United States, it's even more crazy because it's 80% of the population that's affected by an MS4 permit, but it's only 2% of the land area. So that just, it's a good example of how it's really focused around historic development.
So do you need us to make any comment? Does anyone have any comments to share, public or commissioner? Staff?
This is what we're doing.
We can, so as far as the dry extended detention basins, they don't have to be maintained turf. They can also be native vegetation. So if you look at even the current version of the Pennsylvania stormwater BMP manual, you have an option if you can maintain it with native. We would always propose native vegetation. And if there is an extended detention basin that's maintained lawn, you can convert that as long as it's extended detention and we're getting the water quality goals objectives that we need. You can convert that to native vegetation.
So over on Integrity Avenue. How about it? Have you been over to Integrity or based on Integrity?
Yeah.
We built 2 summers ago. That is more of a rain garden planted facility. And again, that was one that was on private property. It took forever to work through all the easements that we needed with all the neighbors. But at the end of the day, I think that one worked out pretty well. And so if you get a chance to ride by, take a look. I haven't seen it this spring yet, but it looked pretty good last summer. It looked more like a rain garden than a detention basin. And for your children.
Hi, Joy Bertie, College Avenue. I'm wondering if the Carson Meadow that's now permanently preserved counts as one of these projects.
It doesn't count as one of the projects, Joy, but you may have picked one of the target areas we have in the PRP.
We did, I was gonna say, we did propose best management practices there. And unfortunately, just to explain that whole meadow thing, because this is something that we get a lot in terms of cost effectiveness. Meadows have value compared to maintained turf, right? But the way that we do the calculations in these pollutant reduction plans, the pollutant loading is based off of pervious and impervious. So in those calculations, a meadow and maintained turf is the same. And it's not actually going to provide value in terms of this pollutant reduction plan. We need kind of like something that's going to provide a more bigger amount of volume management. Those are still valuable projects, especially for public education and outreach.
But if we were to put a little storm sewer in Mill Road, take that storm sewer runoff through that meadow with a little bit of a detention, then we'd be great water quality credits, and that's actually what we proposed in the PRP.
There a distinction between retention?
Yeah.
and other schools?
So, retention is what you get in school when you learn your lessons and you retain that forever. A detention is what you get when you misbehave and you got to stay for a couple hours. So,
Detention dry, retention wet.
Yeah.
Retention is wet, retention pond, detention is dry.
the detention basin is intended to fully drain after the end of the storm by within 48 hours or whatever that time period would be. Permanent pond is more a retention basin.
Which you don't see as frequently anymore these
Are
days.
are they getting credits? Or you mentioned the federal doesn't? Because of the impervious.
Right. I mean, there's different. So if a neighboring municipality is saying they're getting credit for a meadow, then they may have done their pollutant reduction plan using a different type of modeling or something like that. But the vast majority use this method and it would, yeah.
In the case of a basin, if you are reducing the amount of groundwater than with somewhere else, it feels like.
Yeah, you definitely
It's captured too. So, if the only water that meadow's receiving is falling from the sky, it didn't treat runoff from our roads and our half tops and sidewalks and driveways. So we got to intercept the runoff from those impervious surfaces and take it somewhere where we can treat it. And if we can treat it through a meadow and a small berm and a rain garden or retention basin, that's where the credits come. But if we just let that water, like
I was going to get the
Terminal
picture back
Avenue
up.
run into the stream, we don't get any water quality credits for Terminal Avenue storm sewer because it's not treating the water, it's just getting it away from the intersection.
And even even in an existing basin that's older, that wasn't built to modern day standards, where there's a pipe at the very bottom of the basin. So basically there was one of the pictures showed it was probably too quick, but where water goes in and goes right out, sometimes through a concrete low flow channel or something like that. So during small storm events, there's no ability for water to stay in there and get released slowly. So those are the types of basins that we look to retrofit. And retrofitting isn't necessarily just planting the vegetation. It is that definitely, but it's also changing the outlet structure configuration so that the size of the orifice is smaller and maybe higher, so that it discharges more slowly in those smaller storm events.
And that's what we did at Skyline.
Can I just restate that to be clear? So the, large project we talked about, the Terminal Ave, it's about 400K, right? To eventually, that's about where we're at. That doesn't count toward any of these efforts because it's a diversion of water, not a management of water
Correct.
or treatment.
Treatment.
I think just for the benefit of the public, obviously, I think these are very intense terms of art and it's very complicated to having approached it the first time. Even now hearing it for the 20th time still feels like a lot to digest. We're talking about trying to meet these obligations, balance the costs of implementing these projects, and be able to get, extra credit, but not even extra credit, regular credit for some of these, because otherwise the outcome is a penalty of some sort, right? And I don't know, what is the penalty?
So DEP really looks for voluntary compliance. So as of now, DEP as a state agency hasn't assessed any penalties that I know of for failure to implement the pollutant reduction plan. Now, EPA is more of the enforcing agency on the federal level. I still haven't necessarily heard of that in terms of enforcement is concerned. What I think of in terms of penalty is more if DEP assesses that you have a violation, they might say this is a violation. And if you're in violation of this permit and you're looking to get another state or federal permit, or you're looking to apply to another state or federal grant, and you have to list your permits that you have and whether you're in compliance with them, then there could be an impact there. In reality, yes, there could be a fine from the state or the federal government for lack of compliance with this. So from a professional standpoint, I can't say that you won't. The chances of that happening, I don't know. I don't know that it's very high of getting a fine, or you know what I mean? But that's probably more the latter, like I mentioned.
But I think there's a balance, again, for trying to make it digestible for someone coming into the conversation. There's there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's balancing all of these mandates with the costs, but also we want the benefit. You know, one of the, I think residents, at least in my area, have often expressed concern, obviously, for stormwater in general, but not in the way that we, you know, maybe not concerned about the big basins that we're investing in. You're talking about, there's a lot of flooding in my yard, and we've had presentations about what is actually flooding as determined by all this regulation versus what appears like flooding. We've gone so far, Tim and I have even done presentations or provided information to residents like, hey, if we wanted to be sure that water was not coming up from the ground onto your property to this degree, because we have to retrofit basically the area, it would require this expansive project. For example, taking down a house, you know, removing these areas, putting in detention basins once you take down the house. That's a large scale. Down to the smallest scale, which is rain barrels, I
Right.
suppose. However, I just feel like, to a resident hearing that, well, best we can do is, hey, can you go buy some rain barrels? It feels really like a harsh outcome as opposed to making these investments. But these investments, of course, are much larger in scale than simply tucking in a basin here and there. It doesn't actually work like that, while also balancing the mandates that are out there, not just to functionally take care of the water, but to meet these obligations.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we did do in coordination with Tim is just you know, a lot of municipalities were limited in terms of where they could place facilities or retrofit facilities based on what stream they're discharging to that's impaired, and where the area that they drain to the stream is. And in Springfield, pretty much everything is part of the planning area of the pollutant reduction plan. And so that opens up a lot more opportunity. I mean, yes, that means your obligation is higher in general because of the amount of impervious that's running off, but there's a lot more opportunity to do projects like you're talking about, where you're addressing real world issues, drainage issues at the same time as water quality issues.
So if we were to get a grant to offer rain barrels to residents, would that be helpful in these?
So
totals?
we tend to frown upon, or not recommend, not frown upon. In terms of rain barrels, great, again, public education outreach tool, really hard to implement as part of a regulatory objective, because then you'd have to have like an operations and maintenance agreement with each one of those.
On
Yeah,
everyone's
and
individual
then
rain
make sure
barrels?
that they're actually like emptying the rain barrel after a storm event, which is like impossible to
Sure.
actually practically implement. So, well, it would be great if everybody had a rain barrel. It's really hard to make sure that they do it. And DEP tends to like not recommend that. We have used the rain barrel example for like to like for a visualization tool. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, I want to say, like, when you start like converting what we have to do here into numbers of rain barrels, it becomes like, whoa, that's a lot of rain barrels, like 2 rain barrels per.
And double-edged sword of a large. And it's just a double-edged sword of having a lot of area to access to put in projects, but we need a lot of projects. So
Yeah, and Susan, the biggest
Eh.
problem in inner ring suburbs, Abington, Cheltenham, Springfield, is that the vast majority of the development we saw occur was in the 50s, 40s, 70s, well before any stormwater management, requirements were invoked. And so we're trying to find areas, and it's the absence of available real estate that's really a problem. You know, all our neighborhoods are developed without detention basins, so finding open land, finding areas where we can go in and capture runoff and treat it is very difficult. That's what Susan was saying. In a great world, we just, condemn 10 houses and build a basin. But that's not.
Right. And it gets really complicated and expensive to tear up a road and put infrastructure, a stormwater detention facility under public roadway or something like that. But it's happening and people are doing it, but it's not ideal.
Thank you for your efforts on fulfilling our requirements. Any other questions or suggestions?
So do you have any indications that there's gonna be any equipment changes for this program? We're gonna put all the minimums and stuff to the snappers and EPA.
I don't know. I don't have any indication of that. But I don't know. Yeah. As far as on the state level, like I know I also have another boring slide in my longer version of these presentations that shows like the regulations relating to stormwater over time. And Pennsylvania's had the Clean Streams Law, since like 1937 or something like that. Yes, this is a federal permit program, but there's also state regulations in place that require, certain provisions. And so, it's something that, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. There is a draft permit for the next permit cycle already for the MS4 program. And, we don't have any indication of what's going to happen for individual permits. But, we know what it looks like for general permits. So you guys are individual because you have the TMDL. And, but your permit will expire, I guess it's what, 2029? So, so there'll be something new then, at least, but I don't know that it means, like, there's no indication that it means that it's going to go away or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Yep.
Do you have any questions with the scope of work with scope of services? If you remember, Tim started off with, Tim brought that in, he's been running that services through his company. He'd like to separate them out because the work has intensified over the years. Like obligations have increased, and I'd like to be able to give an assignment for it back.
Just from, in terms of just the dollar cost, you said really not.
There's no impact to your budget because it's always been budgeted in through Tim's annual request.
I have no issue. It seems like we're just
Yeah,
being sure it moves into the right bucket,
You know, I've been out in administrative with.
saving Tim some time. All right. Fabulous. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Um,
Nice
appreciate
nice to
your
see you
work.
all. Yep.
Appreciate you all.
Very helpful.
All right, thank you. Well, we do have at least one more presentation with a couple of tack-ons, I think, with regarding the fleet savings from Tyler Vogt of the EAC. Please come on forward and thank you, everyone.
While it has been turned down.
I was gonna say,
So,
thank you so much
I'll
for
try.
all those
Do
who
my
listened
best.
for the hour, but it's really important, so appreciate you.
Of course. So I'm Tyler Folk. I live on Lucan Road in Orland. I'm part of the EAC. My day job, I work in the EV energy and utility space. So one of the first topics I took on as part of the EAC was looking at our police hybrid cruisers and the emissions as well as cost savings of those. And that's why it's listed as a win-win, right? It helps the township get towards its net zero goals as well as saves a lot of money in fuel savings in the process. So I'll walk through the methodology, kind of how I went through calculating the savings. We'll get to the numbers, the exciting part that everyone wants to see, and then talk through next steps in terms of how we intend to track this going forward and any improvements we can make to the process. The first thing I did want to say here is a huge thanks to our Public Works Department. They've been extremely helpful in this process of getting us the data regularly, making improvements to it, being very responsive. I think the first time I did this for the first half of 2025, it probably took me 15, 20 hours just because of the data was so disparate. I think this time for the second half, it took me an hour or two. They made huge improvements to the way that they track the gas records, the template, all of that. We got monthly gas average prices rather than just like a yearly average, so making it more accurate as well. So yeah, I just wanted to thank them for that. So we took into account, the fuel records, the mileage of the police vehicles, and the cost per transaction. The second half, we got that monthly average, and then looking through the fleet, which vehicles are hybrid versus which are gas, because that's obviously the comparison we're doing. We used police vehicles only for this because the admin vehicles were fairly low miles and we're kind of unable to tell exactly when they switched to hybrid. That's something we can look at kind of going forward. Same thing with the Lightning F-150 EV. That was not included here, but want to look at doing that going forward. So the way we calculated this was we looked at the average miles per gallon across all the gas and then all the hybrid vehicles to calculate a gas cost per mile for each powertrain, and then look at the savings for hybrid versus gas. So in theory, if we never bought any hybrids, right, what would we have paid for gas given that in miles per gallon? And what do we pay with the hybrids?
They're all, they're not, none of them are plugged.
The Lightning F-150 obviously is the full plug-in EV, but that's not part of this. So for the first half of 2025, there were 7 hybrids and 7 gas vehicles. 2 of those gas vehicles were replaced with hybrids about halfway through the year. So at roughly a mile gas cost per mile savings of 22 cents per mile, that saved the fleet a little over $12,000 just in fuel savings in the first half of the year. So projecting that out roughly 25,000, we'll get to the second half ones and how we exceeded that. But you can see just by the table on the left and dig into it there, like the hybrids get 14.3 miles per gallon. The gas vehicles get 6 miles per gallon. And that's obviously like lower than the typical like advertised marketed miles per gallon. That's because they're police vehicles. They do a lot of idling, a lot of stop and go traffic. So that's pretty typical numbers. But even that, you know, you can see that double the mileage you get for the hybrids. Sorry. I really don't know.
Well, by the time they're upfit with the cage and everything else, the equipment that they haul around, they can be double. Well, the hybrids are the yeah, the battery.
battery.
Additionally, there's a small average annual maintenance savings for the hybrids as well. You're not doing oil changes as often, things like that. Around $500 a year that we incorporate into this as well. So based on, I think the last time we had the data was 2021. So another data point we're looking to update, but the hybrids were around $4,000 more expensive. I think it's cut off by the little image there, but I think the payback period is around 18,000 miles, something like that. Which at the average mileage for 18.6. Yep. So at the average mileage is about 15 months is the payback period for that cost difference. So anything after 15 months in that vehicle is just generating savings.
What's the price delta then? I don't know if we really even shop the regular one because we buy hybrids off only. I know that we just purchased 2 new hybrids and we sold on 90,000. It's probably not that big. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to be.
So then moving to, oh, did I lose clicking privileges? I think I did. Yeah, it's not letting me click to the next one. It's not letting me click to the next one. There we go. So one more back. The second half, we'll go quick through this. It tracked pretty closely to the first half. The biggest difference, we had that monthly average fuel cost. So it was a little more granular data, a little more accurate, and actually exceeded what I had projected back in the first half, just due to more. I think there were about 10,000 more miles in the second half of 2025 driven. So all that came out to around 26,317 in fuel cost savings in 2025. Per hybrid, that equates to around almost 3,300. And then in terms of fuel avoided, right, that's 11,667 gallons of fuel avoided, which comes out to roughly 114 tons of CO2 emissions avoided. Sounds like a big number. What does that actually mean? The EPA site has a little thing where you can plug it in and it tells you like, what is that actually like equivalent to? And so the one I pulled for this one is roughly the amount of carbon sequestered by 104 acres of US forests in a year. It's a lot. Yeah. Sorry?
It's not insignificant.
No, no. All right. And so one more slide.
The next slide, next steps, do you want to just speak? to
Yeah,
it?
I can just talk.
You want me to tackle it?
There we go. I want to incorporate the admin vehicles going forward. It might not be a huge addition to it, but we have the data, so why not? The F-150 Lightning EV, I think that one will be a significant savings because that's obviously a full EV. The one thing, the data point we will need for that, and I can work with Public Works, is the mileage on that. I think we have the meter data because it has its own dedicated meter for that charger. But then once we can kind of equate the mileage to the energy used, can incorporate that. We'll continue to have more accurate cost savings going forward due to that monthly average gas prices. I'm sure everyone's seen gas prices. I expect these savings to be even higher next time. And then we'll update the maintenance cost savings if that data is available. That's it. The price difference as well, if there's an updated price difference. So
Great. Thank
any
you so much.
questions, comments?
Yeah, thank you so much for doing
Cool.
doing
Of
that
course.
work. My memory is that not necessarily listed here, Joy Berge of EAC wanted to do a quick update on our the energy on.
But I just have one question. Mike, is there any downsides recently for the hybrids? Like I know there was a maintenance issue at one point that took longer than normal. Are there any concerns? I mean, that's really the only challenge we've encountered with the hybrids. Like, other than it takes some used to getting to driving the thing, like, you know, when it's switching back and forth between that, sometimes you can feel like, all right, is it easier or not? Like, you know, like, is it going to stop or not? But the batteries, that they apparently the driving experience has gotten better with the last couple of vehicles that we purchased. I think that's typical of all cars as they age in their progression. Like, you know, the first year of a new model introduction, there's always kinks that have to get worked out. As these that, you know, gotten a little bit older, they worked out all the kinks. We do periodically have to replace the batteries. Now, fortunately, they're covered under warranty. If they weren't covered under warranty, I think a lot of your savings would be exhausted, because they're very, very costly and time-consuming process to do that. How long been warranty? So I think if you look at 80,000 miles, 8 years, 80,000 miles.
I was just going to ask what the how much life do we give one of these vehicles before we
Usually
retire?
100,000 miles and they're out the door. I know I mean, things. Good, one negative, so you let everything off. Yeah. Oh, that's factored into the maintenance part of it.
Yeah.
The oil changes, the brakes, you know, all the.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you.
That's not.
And thanks for your work on that.
Joy Berge, I'm speaking now as Vice Chair of the Environmental Advisory Commission. So thank you, Tyler. The other report, well, just background, brief update. Recall that in 2019, the commissioners committed unanimously, well, that aspirationally, but it's our intent to move to 100% renewable energy by 2035 and 2050. So the fleet is a huge part of it, but the energy used in buildings is the other huge part of it. So recall that starting back in 2020, we gave you periodic reports on the amount of energy, electricity, and natural gas used month by month in the 3 buildings through the energy audits that we did and other savings. Visually tracking the bar charts, we say have saved a lot of money, very important to taxpayers, and we've avoided huge amounts of CO2 emissions. But you haven't seen one of those reports in quite a while for various reasons. We haven't been able to get to the data. but we think we have figured it out now. So the EOC has been capturing that data. I believe Commissioner May and Mike Taylor talked the end of last year about maybe the staff would take it back over, but we think we have a good solution and the EOC is willing to keep doing that. So Tyler and I have been doing some digging, so I want to let you know where that stands. So first of all, still until now, the PICO data comes in and somebody has to retype all the PICO data into an Excel sheet that we crunch. That's both inefficient and also error prone. So we found a new way, and this was a tip from Wilson Engineering, whose services we get thanks to the state. We now think we have access to our building energy usage through a new PICO tool. Apparently it's an old PICO tool, but it's been broken for a long time and it now works. Thank you, Mike Taylor. He's got Tyler set up now to get to that data that should allow us like automatically click a button and it'll send the data from PICO system into Portfolio Manager. That's the Department of Energy tool, free tool that's available that'll let us track all this data and make beautiful reports. We've been told. That's what we're hoping on. So Tyler and I are talking with Diane Harron at Practical Energy Solutions. They're our energy auditor. We think they've already set up all of our buildings in Portfolio Manager. We hope. We're waiting for an answer from Diane. That'll save us time. And we'll keep you posted. The other thing, we got a great suggestion from Craig Hinton on the Shade Tree Commission. Do we track our water usage in these buildings? No, we don't. But again, we think Portfolio Manager will let us track that. So that's what we hope. So we'll be back in a few months. We hope with some pretty bar charts that'll help keep us tracking and cutting our energy usage. So thanks again. Thanks to Public Works. And thank you to Tyler, because I surely don't know how to do all this stuff. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Our previous tracker was just Commissioner Wilson noticing a high water bill every month. So that would be helpful to have a real tracker.
Yeah, but that was important to point out, like that is not what work is to be able to more swiftly identify anomalies. So that if there's malfunctioning thermometers around the building, or if the track water, then we can figure out pipes, whatever. And that's these things don't persist for a long time. Looking at the Bible, save a lot of money in the process.
I think while we're here and there's several members of the EAC here, there's only one other piece. I just want to quickly address, or two pieces. One is the application to the PADP Energy Development Program. It seems like there's a no cost effort, and a member of the EAC would like to apply to that program and have an individual be represented in that group. Did you?
Yeah,
Was that about the
speak to it,
program?
yeah, real briefly and hopefully answer any questions. Aaron Stumpwood, Southampton Avenue, Chair of the EAC. So the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection has a community energy development program where they provide, where municipalities, government entities can apply for 8 slots to get free technical assistance from Protogen. Protogen Inc. They're a consulting organization. I think they're based in Quakertown. But they provide all sorts of environmental services and energy services to local governments, from energy, like wholesale energy procurement to microgrid development to battery storage savings, all sorts of different consulting services. They help with development of like a climate action plan, which is something that we're actually in the process of developing ourselves. So that would be really appreciated in having some professionals help us develop that. So if you have any questions about the program, basically it involves us having a point person, which would be me, filling out an application process, then me being also the point person to provide information, respond to questions from PADEP about how to move the process forward.
I think it sounds wonderful, but any questions?
Any formal action?
Yeah, just want you to be aware of it and allow them the opportunity to apply on behalf of the township.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much for raising your hand to take on more meetings.
Yeah.
And while we're in the EAC, and again, we have several members of our EAC here. There's a vacancy at the EAC, and we have one individual who intends to apply and officially interview. We haven't scheduled that. Although, has
She
she?
confirmed attendance next month.
Okay,
If you're-
great. I think that's fine. And of course, theoretically, if anyone else would like to apply and if they're able to, they could interview at that time. And so that's all I have outstanding for EAC. And I know these members are here. Is there anything else EAC related you'd like to discuss while we're here? Beautiful. All right. Well, well,
One question I have.
Sure.
What's the status of, Mr. Campus solar? installation?
So that's in my management report I mentioned in there that, we had hoped to get started right away, but we applied for the Montgomery 2040 grant. That is worth about $250,000. The people at the county have said, I want to put the brakes on for a minute. Well, any costs you incur now aren't going to be reimbursable with the Montgomery 2040 grant if you're awarded that grant. So you might want to hold back a little bit. So I contacted the contractor that we've been working with and just said, hey, look, we have this grant pending. We think June 1, we might be able to hear some information. We certainly need to get started by July 1. There's a federal rebate that we're tracking. So all these things, like it's great that we can get all these grants, but it's an art of trying to think of them all straight. We all have different deadlines and different requirements. So we got the brakes on right now for the moment. But it's still in the process. I think the equipment's been ordered. We may get an invoice at some point from them for design work, which is fine. That's part of on them. We can pay that. If we can do that way. But I don't know about the materials that have been ordered and apparently have been received by them. Whether he's going to be looking for some kind of agreement there or whether he'll work with us. So more to come.
beautiful. All right. Well, given that, I guess we will now turn back to briefly any public comment that's remaining. If anyone, just because there's a couple other members here, if you have anything else you want to discuss, you're welcome to come up and discuss. Otherwise, we can go right into the book.
All right.
I think so. Did I miss something? I'm like- all right, so we do have an individual here to talk about the AEDs, which is agenda tab M. So just kidding. He meant he wanted to hold on and to the last breath here. The automated external defibrillators, tab M. So there has been a request, and I think I'll maybe bop it off here to Rob if you want to speak to how it went down at Parks and Rec regarding this request.
So it's no danger of first really actually done with this from the components yeah, you're only liable if you have the devices and inoperable or people are untrained that would be expected to utilize them. But I mean, person to make the arguments like, you know, the person to why wouldn't you think none of this fully looking that's the and the last, you know, over investment is undiagnosed congenital heart defect that is not that it's suddenly, you know, the pilots prevent if by minutes. And so, you know, by this is a good problem. If this happens, and these are quick responding. Is it 5 minutes, 1 minute, that's the issue. Adding that, so
I think there was a discussion about this a couple of years ago. We talked to, and this, I believe, and to be clear, the police officers have 5 of them, portable AEDs, and then we have one at the rec center, I believe.
The rest of it is one, one, three, library, and the public work, and the.
And this request is to have one also at Royal Beach Hearing System. I don't know if anyone was necessarily opposed to it, but just trying to figure out how it would.
I remember from the discussion a few years ago, it sounds like a lot of this has been discussed now. And yes, but the idea that they can get the expenses and basically it's a true security. I guess there's some technologies in place. We get that from walking along.
I think also Mike and I spoke about a practical matter of, to Rob's point, if you need to use it very quickly, even if it hypothetically, let's say we had it, it was installed, it would require someone who needed it in the heat of the moment to know exactly where it is, which, go to wherever it is from potentially a distance from the field, get it, use it. Not saying that's an inhibitor, just more of, is that going to effectively achieve what we want? And at some point we talked about, is it possible for sports clubs to have portable AEDs with them? Because it would be the individuals that would most likely would need it, less likely a random passerby, and then even less likely that a random passerby knows that there's an AED, would know where it is, runs to it. Right.
I remember that kind of some of the feedback that was in normal life, that person's not available, and he can't make it that day. It's gonna be in someone else's car that day.
Well,
And then the question is, medical pain. Right, it's not still happening. I get place. Multiple meetings for the day. This big handoff. Shit out of it. It seems like trouble.
It does. So it is, and the little leagues have them, and the little leagues have them because they're in the building, right? And so everybody knows where they are. The challenge is for the soccer club, the lacrosse club, the people who don't have a physical building necessarily where they're fixed and accessible. And that's where the discussions do. Is it something that, like a coach, president of the club, or whoever it is responsible, a safety officer or somebody, and that they're the one responsible to have the device and they're treating them. That was the discussion last time. So to Jim's point, one of the bigger concerns we had last time was the theft and the vandalism. But there seems to be like a new, and the other part was these things, if they're stored outside, they're subject to climate issues, the extreme cold, extreme heat. There's this, Jim was out at the Park and Rec conference and he found this CTEC 4000 case in all weather enclosure. It's irradiated from theft and tampering, and it enables bystanders to access it through 911, which addresses 2 issues. One of the big challenges that they found is that people will run and get the AED, but nobody calls 911, which is what starts the ambulance to get there or police to get there. But with this device, you call 911, they give you the code for the device, you open it up and you get the AED, now you've got 911 on your way, plus you have access to the device.
Plus you have a record of some calls. Somebody called 911 to steal it.
Right, exactly. Well, he wouldn't be able to get into it. So that seems to be a solution.
I think the question still to be, maybe kick it to staff to explore costs and management protocols necessary so that it's safe for everyone and also effectively achieves the goal of having it readily available to people who are prepared and aware of where it is.
I think with organized sports, I think the leagues get that message out. There's a
Sure.
whole bunch of parents, a whole bunch of coaches. If they make it a point to communicate that, somebody's gonna know what it is, but it's not.
And for what it's worth, you know, we are developing a rec center, and at that time, and we already have one at the rec center. Well, it'll be accessible to Royal Beach at the new rec center as well. Cisco, there's a proposal for a shed by lacrosse, I think. And if they're interested in building a shed out there, that was done at the last Parks and Rec meeting. And if that comes to fruition, that could be a good opportunity to partner in putting an AED perhaps. I don't know, just trying to think of solutions. I'm not sure we're ready to approve of it yet, but I think we need to map out a few solutions, costs, and the operation protocols needed for it. That would be next steps. Fair? Okay. Do you have any more questions? Great. If you don't mind, if you have more to say, please come to the mic. This is for the benefit of the folks on Zoom. Thanks.
We're really just looking for overall feedback to the Parks and Rec proposal. I know they kind of kicked it forward. Matt Moore, live on Avenue Road. I know one of the concerns you guys brought up was it's one in the rec center that's not accessible right now to participants on the field. So that's essentially relevant to that. You know, one of the data points, sorry, I can speak of them all my way through the presentation.
Sure.
Is that it should be in like a known fixed location at the field where it's highly visible. So everybody who goes to the field can identify that it's clearly in a fixed location. So putting it from person to person or team to team kind of defeats that purpose. So it should be in an obvious known fixed location that anybody at the field can clearly see and identify. I think Parks and Rec did some work as well, calling around the surrounding towns who have them in place at the fields and have had no issues or instances with theft, tampering, or any issues with them.
I think that's all fair. I think it sounds like we have a plan to consider it and then be sure we understand the true cost of it.
Yeah, a lot of data out there that you guys can see for yourselves that support it. I know the police have them, but to your point, when you're talking minutes, I think the one data point was every minute your survival rate increases 7 to 10%. That it's on. So if you're talking 1 minute to 5 minutes, you're talking potentially a 40% chance or increase in survival.
Understand. I think it's important. And I think we gotta figure out a way to make it happen.
I'm really curious about the model. Picturing somebody sprinting there and then not knowing the call.
Yeah.
Stand outside, you know, how quickly in that operated. Given whatever signal.
I think I understand the machines themselves have to do it too, some of them, right?
How to do it, I'm saying it gets the access.
Oh.
The anti.
Oh, the anti-theft part. I mean,
Yeah. I know a lot of the fields have them without that case too, and they said they don't have problems with it, so whether that is even a necessary thing or not. Because they're not cheap. I mean, yeah. Replacing one a year. That is tough.
right. And I guess my point to the rec center that we are going to be getting that done in the next, let's say within the next 2 years, you know, hopefully breaking ground and potentially having it done. But in the meantime, there's a gap of time, obviously, we need to be sure before we install it on the exterior. That reminds me to be sure we install it on the exterior, the rec center. So, more to come. All right.
Yeah, Tim's already looking into like grant funding for it and that's how protocol.
Beautiful.
Gotten protocols from other municipalities.
Great.
Yeah, not gonna reinvent the wheel.
No, I don't think so. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have in my notes for us to also do quick committee reports. Do you want to kind of do a quick one before we hit the books, or do you want to hit the books first? Consensus? Committee reports?
Maybe you'll hit some of the
Yeah, I'll
stuff
hit some of the stuff.
in the book or it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Go down the line. We already hit one with AED. Rob, Parks and Rec.
It would be the local and then that is. So, you know, we can put it back in both, but I think, you know, the location there, the part of the. It's close to the back.
So they're gonna go back to the drawing board and come back? Is that the?
Yeah, they haven't heard. I think we should discuss now how people feel about a bunch of, I'm like, you know, the system, I don't think they're going to do this vision. It's a share for the person, one class of the thought. That's been lots to me, so it's like, we could be some good stuff, but one thousand line race, well, I was going to thought, right, and it's always done, well done, the hundred and one, I was saying, how do you guys feel? I mean, if I'm getting what this is, I don't know, if it's not something that is going to go, that we need to do, they can really, discuss. I think that they were directed to come back, right, for the new plan? No, they're waiting for us to come back to them with reactions to the proposed locations. Right now, the cost of these,
So I think that it needs to be workshop that with them offline, and then when it gets to a book, the appropriate time, and it, you know, whether it's, yeah, at the appropriate time. I guess theoretically, the way a Parks and Rec meeting works, their minutes don't actually hit us until the next meeting potentially, right? So that would technically come up for our next meeting. That,
well,
I mean, not that we can't discuss it now, but I'm just
it would
saying.
come up in the form of a formal recommendation.
Yeah.
From like the advisory committee.
And I would say they still need to maybe workshop it, it sounds like, and they could obviously reach out offline for the purpose of this meeting. And when it's ready through Parks and Rec, with the recommendations of Parks and Rec, then we can sift through it.
It's quite a lot of fun. It's these two panels and 5 panels, and then it says on the side. The 5 panels. Touch on the paths, the building, the wall, very close to some of the left. But still, I think you're going to do it's the youth of the charity, sometimes for the service. Trying to build some path that it sits on. So it's important to let them talk at all, but it's also important.
In that shed, because the stormwater into the shed, that would be one of our projects.
Under the shed, maybe.
I'm not curious what the I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's not going to be good. And so.
Yeah, I think that's the only feedback. Workshop it and come back. Beautiful. Public. I think we could briefly say that the subcommittee of, and I think that's actually in the news report, perhaps. Still working on it, right? Subcommittee of commissioners have met. I thought it was. Subcommittee of commissioners have met and are still discussing and trying to get to another. I think you did. I think it's in your report. Your report is C. I swear I read this. It's
He was in the, I was in
It might be a
a
staff meeting.
All right, we went out today.
Which I also read today, so it could be that. Well, anyways, I think we could share that the subcommittee of commissioners, presently including Rob, Jim Lee, and Brendan Maker, to have gotten together to continue workshopping that idea. And I think until it gets to a point where it's ripe for further discussion, that's where it's living, but it hasn't left our sites. All right.
But I would say we have some ideas, we have some potential site that could work.
Great, beautiful. Beth?
There's an announcement.
That's in here anyway. I'm not sure. Jim?
Yeah, so zoning had a full slate, a busy slate, as you know, from last month. Conflicts, right, actually. And they heard 5 cases, all 5 were approved unanimous. Public Bridge Community Church, very minor, setback variance was approved. The fence issue that we all discussed in the board, we took action previously, homeowner. Based on redesign, and also approved by the hearing board, property Everton Avenue. With an addition, very slow variance. Property on Montgomery Avenue. Garage proposed. Got a little bigger of a variance because the setback was being accepted. And then finally, popular project is this year was going to slightly approach upon flood zone. That's it. They've got a bunch, as you see, in books for this month as well.
Great.
So we're gonna do this.
Planning, that was present for me, I believe, the last meeting, or maybe we were both. We haven't had one since we last reported, so just kidding. Since the Grove one, that was a large meeting, on 28 Grove, and our next meeting is tomorrow. EAC, I think we've covered pretty much all of
Covered a lot
all of
there.
it.
Just tomorrow we still have that open spot. And even if that spot is filled by somebody else, just get it moved. Because it's been a stringent prolific group, so it's great. We also have normal May coming up for people going to go to that. And that is where people will let their lawns grow. It's a big season for insects and pollinators. And so, when your lawns grow in that period of time, it's very hot for the environment. And also during a very rainy season, it's also nice with some snow. So that's a great thing if people are getting involved with that. And then there is the native plant sale. It's coming up.
Beautiful. Ed, any library meetings since we last saw each other? Beautiful. That
Sheet 3, I'm gonna actually pick it back to Rob, we covered for the last 2 weeks ago. On the 11th.
that's right. That's why I was confused.
However, and we're gonna talk about it, it's the 25th is the everyday, so.
Beautiful. All right.
Really concerned about.
Mike, I think I mentioned it to you. What's the update on?
Yeah, so the trees were, Tim was gonna bring them to the attention of the developer who installed them as part of the redevelopment of the property next door. And they'll either get replaced through that, or they're gonna get replaced with something else through the canopy project that the Prussian Trail folks are working on. So everybody can do that.
We are aware
Other
they're
ones that were given
dead
to us
trees.
For free are going to get replaced.
We are aware there are some dead trees there that we will give for free. They'll be
Where it was
replaced.
previously an overgrown mess of invasive vegetation.
Gotcha. All right.
Sometimes there's
Somebody built that into the salary.
But the salary review has not been, it's sitting on Andy's desk, actually. It's very large.
I mean, I think if we were gonna have a wholesale development of state of Weston, Hank Park property. We would certainly bring them in. I think we were talking about 3 or 4 trees. How many trees we could plant? Yeah. I mean, there was an offer to plant trees to screen and adjacent use. Tim's landscape architect, so either deer tolerant, you know. I think they're giant green arborvitae.
I think we'll take that note and Saldo will cover it and we'll just double check next time this comes up and be sure that we're being consistent.
We get a lot of shade triggering at EAC meetings.
Yeah.
I think we can work on that. And that's a good pitch. I think it's a great idea.
So, I mean, the EDC is pretty good about sending or looking for a volunteer from their committee to attend another committee and kind of serve as a liaison back and forth. Yeah, so
Then thanks, I see. So that's happening a little bit, but I think it's really a little more formal artist collaboration. Getting with players.
I think it's an idea worth exploring. I think that comes before at that some later time.
We do it next month, right?
Yeah, we'll go next month.
Yeah.
They just met on Wednesday last week, right? Yeah.
We did that the last few years.
At that point, your agenda on what completed, you get it on Thursday, so that
Just-
usually trails by a month.
The tricky nature of Parks and Rec.
This is just something we revisit.
Yeah, and I think the only, my understanding, the only comment in the past from fucking with the advisory committee has been, okay, we'll approve it, but
Make some effort.
make some effort to get more township participation since you're using our facilities, because, you know, the numbers have been going in the opposite direction in terms of the number of players that are.
I think there's like, supposed to be this cost for Springfield Township. That's been specific.
Yeah, understandable. It's challenging in the summer just to get folks to show up there for events in the middle of the summer.
Summer leagues.
Sure. Well, thank you all for your reports. Let's go right into it. It looks like tab A, 28 Grove, we discussed that. Anything else remaining? Seeing none, next is tab B, Building Code Board of Appeals.
Have an initial fee is for George Schaefer, is expiring. The unit was called George moved from Springfield Township last year. George had also been a member of the planning commission and is an architect by profession, so he did that slot on the Building Code Board of Appeals first. When we talked about this last year, the thought was just let us come run and revisit this year as to whether you want to try and find another architect or engineer or somebody like with building experience. The construction manager could be anybody really, to fit, you know, to fill that space. So,
I think it would behoove us to post it and also reach out to anyone we know who could be interested once the posting is live. And part of this is because Mr. Schaefer does not actually live in the township any longer. And so I think we should probably at least do our best effort to ensure that we've exhausted our options in time.
In the event that we don't have a qualified person.
So before we reach out to any of the folks for reappointment, we run past people first and then contact them. You know, sometimes we not to reappoint somebody. So, you know, we don't make that assumption automatically. We try and talk to them, but I'm sure he'd be willing to help out.
I mean, he's not far, right?
I think at the Lower Merion.
And they need 0 to 1 tons per year.
God willing, they don't have to zero that.
Preferably zero.
So I'm just saying, like, if he's willing, he still has a connection. Spend more time. Finding a place for somebody.
Yeah, yeah, the other people were volunteered to be on it, we just made a phone call, we didn't go assemble, but.
If it was a normal, like, advisory committee that meets regularly,
I guess I would only say that should that one time occur, should someone say, hey, you haven't followed the rules and trying your best to be sure that you have someone in town.
Yeah, that's my only concern, that somebody on a technicality, like say the building code board of appeal meets and you don't approve a request for a variance from the building code, then that person challenges it at the next level. Like, the UCC does have a provision where it says you can have an architect if you don't have one in the town.
Right.
I have to believe it's fine.
I think
Well,
it's-
it's advertising. and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's worth trying and to Jim's point, if nothing comes out within,
Then we'll
And
have
it's
the basis
advertising
for
period.
saying, hey,
Exactly.
we tried, nobody.
exactly. So just exhaust our administrative options. That's it, so. All right, now the township manager report. Keep on talking, Mike.
Yeah, sure. I'll go through here pretty quickly. So, we had a nice breakfast meeting with the folks from Mississippi Trails on the 24th of March. Commissioner Goldberg was there. A few members of staff were there. And it was good representation from all the municipalities in our immediate area anyway. There seems to be somebody there from White Marsh and from Upper Dublin, Hamlin, Springfield. So, good meeting. We also learned about the open space grant program from the county. And since Bill Hartman put that presentation on, and he's also in charge of the trail, I caught him afterwards and said, what's the story with the Cross County Trail on Staten Avenue? Not for the last time, I'm sure. I heard we're almost ready to bid that at the end of the summer. So hopefully we'll bid it at the end of the summer and go. I guess I don't blame them. That's a pretty big investment there. So. Cheltenham Avenue, the big story on Cheltenham Avenue, CCDI program, which is the Transportation and Community Development Initiative, is going to be 2 public meetings coming up. The first one is going to be Tuesday, the 14th at the Wadsworth Library from 5 to 6:45 p.m. That's going to pretty much be just like an open house, like different stations where you walk around and look at the different things. You can provide some public feedback as well. A second public meeting is going to be held Thursday, May 28th at the Township. So we're going to host that one. That one is going to be a review of the study findings and an opportunity to provide input on some recommended improvements. Let's say show at that time. For those who don't know, that study is to determine the feasibility of road diet with bike pedestrian amenities on Cheltenham Avenue. There seems to be excess capacity there. So that's in progress. There's a survey that's out there now that people can respond to. That should be open. I think the end of the month.
Yeah, and the survey is actually pretty comprehensive and easy to use. Click, type in your notes. I'm sure they're receiving lots of comments.
Well, that's Township website.
Yep.
Yes, it's not our website link, but you can link to it from the announcement. There's a project page, I believe, on it.
Yep.
So I know I've had a lot of traffic concerns, for example, in that area and have just consistently referred to that and then went in myself and just made the notation, pretty easy peasy. So, all right.
Next item is the PELRAS conference, which is a Public Employee Labor Relations Advisory Service, which is put on by the Pennsylvania Municipal League and the Association of Pennsylvania Municipal Management. That was in person from 25 to 26. Craig and I went. Actually, a really good conference. It has attorneys, arbitrators, actuaries, economic analysts, and they go through a myriad of labor issues. And they do it in the form of panel discussions and have case examples and there's role playing and question and answers, but people who actually make these decisions, don't have to go there. Reason we went this year in particular, police contract is up at the end of this year. and right behind them, the public works contract. One of the interesting sessions that they had a mock, Act 111 interest arbitration case, which is the process that you go to when the police and the township can come to an agreement on a contract. And the partial arbitrator from each side and then the neutral, and the neutral makes the decision. They had a panel discussion where they actually did a presentation, and they used the Montgomery County municipality very close by, Patriot Township.
So you took a lot of extra notes.
Mid-county interchange, a
Gotcha.
mall, and a Metroplex, and other things there. They happen to be, I think, the second highest paid in the state. And the township was in more of a like defensive position through this whole arbitration case. Just trying to like keep things manageable as opposed to like accelerating, getting to be the number one paid in the state. So it was interesting. At the end of the day, they still ended up with 4% rate for 4 years. But they didn't get, longevity as a percentage of their salary and those kind of things. So that's pretty interesting, actually. Primary election, last month, we talked about the fact that the Whitmore and those companies provided the county with notice that they weren't going to be available at a polling location for 2 of the wards in Ward 2. We offered the gymnasium at the rec center as a temporary solution. With the understanding that, hey, we got this other project that we're thinking about ourselves, and next year we might be having to move again. They said, thanks, we appreciate it. We have a couple of things that we're looking into right now so that we don't have to move it again next year. One of those is Grace Lutheran Church. I don't know the feasibility of that or not.
That's one question.
Yes.
Yes. But it's apparently a pretty small ward.
They're both pretty small wards. So if it would work, it'd be nice to kind of stay there. Surprised they wouldn't take the offer on the rec center. Again, anything to keep it close would be really
And where
helpful.
was it? Let's put a pin in it for now and see how we go.
Well,
Work out.
yeah.
I know, that's why I pointed out, like the.
Are we announcing this location soon? I'm sure I'm going to get some emails. So I just want to be prepared.
The offer was extended.
Well, maybe check in with them again to see if they could update us. It'd be nice to inform people ahead of time that the location is moving sooner than later.
Oh, yeah, we changed our tax.
Right. Solar project, we just covered that.
already.
So to be clear, I do the math right here. It's 629 minus just basic math, 189 minus 250. I mean, it could cost us 190.
Good.
Wow. So 190 with a 3-year
Maybe even a little
payback.
bit less because there's some pico rebate that eventually, once it's in operation for over.
It's like the refrigerator kind where you like mail it back in at the
Something
end.
Maybe in operation for a year, that's.
So it's possible that solar project could be as low as 190 thereabouts K based on basic math, which
Everything
is
works out.
pretty wild. That would be crazy. Yeah, I think at some point we were prepared to pay over $1 million. So thank you all for working hard on that. The waste plan.
Municipal waste management plan. So the county has to update their municipal waste management plan, which includes household waste as well as recycling. And they've assembled, they had assembled a steering committee and started working on a plan. And the Department of Environmental Protection said, there's a few people who are missing from this committee, and that's the municipalities that actually self-collect trash and recycling. Apparently, we make up 30% of the Montgomery County population, but 60% of the recycling rates that are devoted to waste stream. So that just tells you how much of that is probably making its way into the waste stream with private collectors.
The private collection which is not making the effort.
Probably.
I don't think they even offer it, right? Just a much.
I mean, the big ones do, Republic and Waste Management, but I think that there's a fair number of the other smaller haulers that it's more cost efficient for them than landfill. Because they own landfill, they own recycling centers, and they have to pay a competitor to do it. Not what the law says, but.
Realistically.
And then there's other municipalities in Montgomery County that don't, mandate it. They don't have to go because of their population. So, but in any event, like I volunteered to be on it and I was selected, I'm going to be participating on it. So as a reward, I got the first 3 chapters of the draft plan that I have to read.
Well, thank you again for volunteering for more meetings. Appreciate you.
Natural land, we talked about natural lands and help to take them off from municipalities. for open station, preservation and conservation. So I was able to finally track down, the vice president, for the conservation of natural lands. And, we had a good conversation. He gave me the ins and outs of what goes into, considering a ballot referendum to increase your income tax for open space purposes. He's gonna get me a proposal after we talk to his staff, but we made the connection and I told him, I'm interested in at least learning about the process. And talking about, the Carson property and everybody's like concerns around them. I mean, they're aware of it, but he asked me to send him some more information about it, so I did. So,
Speaking of person,
that's the segue into the next one. So I spoke with the real estate advisor for the trust about the status of the property. She's principally responsible for getting the buildings and the property back into some sort of repair because it was neglected for so long by PHMC when we were operating it. So she's really been focused on repairing roofs and clearing out buildings and getting utilities reconnected and building HVAC systems working and security systems. She thinks that there's another 30 to 45 days of that before they're going to transfer it into more of like a maintenance mode of operation where things have been stabilized and, got a better handle on things. Once they've been made safe, they're going to accommodate the request that I put in many months ago of the Historical Society to tour the buildings and photo document things. And they're in their control right now and we have a good contact, so they want to be able to get in there and get that done. Not knowing what may or may not happen with them in the future. They also expressed a concern about the number of people that have started to use the property sort of as like, a recreational area that may not be necessarily a bad thing. They're just concerned about liability and the number of people that are on there. They want to be good neighbors, but they're just trying to get their hands around that as well. They have ordered another appraisal for the property. The last one that was done was quite outdated. I think it was 2017 or 18, 17 or 18. I don't know. So they're going to have that done. They also have to have that done for their insurance carrier as well. So that's going to take another 2 to 3 months to get done. And at that point, I would kind of like mentioned several times that a subcommittee of the board would be interested in meeting with the trustees just to find out where you guys going with this, and this is an important asset for the town. And they're willing to accommodate that. They just kind of want to know who's going to be there. Do we need counsel? The kind of questions are going to be asked. They want to be prepared. So anyway, just trying to get updated on where that is. They did get some interest in the property. Interestingly, 2 of the adjacent landowners. I don't think one of the adjacent landowners can afford to put them. I think they just want to stab a portion of the property, which is required in subdivision. But they didn't have. It did sound like they were plans to develop finally. And then a couple of educational institutions. I don't know if but they didn't and I don't know if it's coming to her directly or if it's coming to other people. And she's just getting, again, keep in mind, she's responsible for the facility. She's not.
this is a new name, individual that you've planted. I don't remember this name. So
No, she's been involved in the past.
Okay. I think at some point we talked about having a public identified meeting to offer to the public. I don't know if it's right now, but open to maybe seeing what it is. The purpose, I think, of that is just purely to inform all of us, all of the residents, but specifically those who have a keen interest, whether they're adjacent constituents or just have an interest in preservation, about the status of all the avenues that are availed. Basically, what pathways are possible,
Might be
knowing that
you
knowingly. we
probably
should
think
figure-
about that a little bit before you schedule a meeting, because that has the potential to go sideways.
Well, right, and that's why I'm saying, I just feel like
Could be accomplished through a statement or an update or
something on our
something
agenda.
on the website that we would then read as a statement.
Well, it's not our project. I think it's more of just information for those who have an interest on the station of that.
Could do. Like do some kind of an update,
I think the update, it
It's
makes sense.
made more
Particularly
sense.
If we're not, if it's accessible, I think if you don't control the property.
Yeah. I think that's fair. That's fair.
The information from us is.
Yeah, and we're mostly at these meetings, we just essentially get updates and like anyone else would maybe make a request of it. And it'd just be nice to have a single source and a web page would be fine that we could reference for residents who I mean, I would say frequently ask me, hey, what's going on with that? And I'd like to not have to repeat myself that no, I didn't. reach
Really,
out.
the flip side of that is it's very limited information. Yeah, and then is that that being there then making it seem like we're not getting good information.
Well, it also doesn't have impact in the negotiations. They have a out there, now there's pay information. Oh, you must be desperate. No, it's information. Like, I don't really have anything out there
Yeah.
about any problem that we don't. Because now we're still in between, any potential transaction.
Well, Carson Valley is already on our open space plan that's already out on the webpage. You know, it's not referenced by our
It's on our,
township.
I see what the point is.
I understand.
Like, Carson is one of multiple.
Multiple,
properties,
sure.
but we don't have
A
section of our
dedicated-
website dedicated to any of those other properties.
Or maybe it's just a notation on the open, I think we do have a program maybe on open space because we have an open space fund. Maybe a line item on the open space fund page. That's, you know, we are aware of properties such as this. I don't know. The reality is I just know that a lot of people are asking about it, trying to find a way to be earnest and fair about sharing information without intervening in in anything that's going on. Well, I mean, right, we don't know, it's not our property. We wish to preserve it if we can. I guess, right. So maybe just continue to do nothing and continue to receive and field these queries and continue to share the information that we can as we do here.
Yeah, not only we don't think. It's a matter of what. Hey. What boils down to, okay, it's a broken improvement. It's so, not really an issue.
Okay. Nice.
I think it's not.
Like some posts, like,
that's not the.
And I think it's a good opportunity too for us to share some general goals. Somebody, may not be looking at a general open space plan, but they're interested in parsing out. We can sort of
Probably,
state those goals.
probably once every other month, I'll get an email or query that says, have you considered Carson Valley? Have you considered trying to preserve Carson Valley? Not that it's a major problem per se to have to respond to that every single time, but every single time I feel like we're having a reset and say, well, what's the latest on that? And if we just say, hey, at the meetings, at a regular monthly meetings, we often do get an update on that may be satisfactory. Because I think the answer seems to be, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, yes, if the opportunity and all the stars aligned and we could assist in any way, we would love to have continued open space. I don't think that's at debate per se. But our tools are limited, hence why we're exploring some of these options with natural landscape, for example. And opportunity is limited. It's not presently something that we can engage in necessarily. That fair.
That's because the people are there to have said, it's an important piece of open space, given the context of its location, the urban farm, National Jurisdiction Economy, Springfield Farm, but Marshall, and whether it stays in the public, whether it stays in private or if someday becomes public ownership. I think the goal for everybody would be in the perfect world that it stays open space. But we don't control it, it's privately owned, and there's only so much we can do, it's not the same, but there's only so much we can do.
Well, it's good to know that should we decide that we want more information, it certainly seems like Ms. Trefagan would be amenable to taking a meeting with specific questions, and it's available. So, thank you.
Then this is an update on the MORE grant, which is a municipal opportunity for retrofits and energy efficiency. That's the program that we received a grant in amount of $50,000 to do energy benchmarking and auditing, and energy conservation measures. That's at the municipal campus here. We practical energy solutions, so they've done some work for us in the past, which resulted in some energy savings for us. They took a look at things and we had some issues, some things that are out of whack. They're particularly at the library. But we're not really sure why. They think that we need to have both building systems totally recommissioned, which may be good in an ideal world. Then we can get a baseline and find out where things might not be operating properly. It could be that sensor and not running, or it's giving bad readings and making this thing run more than it needs to. But you can't get to that point before you do like a total recommissioning.
What does that mean?
That's when you take a look at all the building automation systems and you go back to what the manufacturer's specs say it's supposed to be and recommission.
Starting at the
Start it all over from the beginning.
That seems like a crazy number.
It's a huge number. Now, for two buildings, and they're two pretty big buildings. But given that what we spend on an annual basis, what it would cost for that?
More than 50% of we spend our hood.
Yeah. And that doesn't include the replacement of any of the sensors or any of the controls. Well, and these are 10 years old and they're out of whack. So that just says to me, I look at if we cover this in 5 years, maybe we'll get 5 years of energy savings. But then we got to redo it all over again. It's 10 years old. So and they said it's not unusual for these things to get out of whack because of failing components. So I think we got to shop the number a little bit more. I actually sent the proposal, one proposal we got so far, over to the Wilson engineering people. They're working with us through the shared energy manager, and they're a great resource. They're willing to look at it. And, so if they have any ideas, there's got to be other companies that we can go to for a proposal as well. The thing is, the teamwork is the one that come in quarterly and look at our system. So they should know better than anybody. And maybe that's what I'm talking about.
Can that not get to the same, is that far off from that same outcome to just look at where the efficiencies are and the adjustments? Versus just.
Well, it's gonna have to be another question I ask. If I get a second proposal and in the same vicinity, it's gotta be that. I don't know that we can justify that. What can we do to try and isolate issues or deal with like very specific problems that practical energy solution is concerned about?
Which they've done. For.
Yeah, for sure. That was when the system was only like 2 or 3 years old.
But so it seems like at least 17K direction would give us, it's covered under the grant.
Practical energy solutions would be covered, right? They're additional costs. That would be more with the algorithms and things that they program in to try and get them maximize the energy efficiency. But in order to get to there, we think we need to figure out what's going on with the system that's making them run kind of wacky. There are sections of the building that's cold, while others are warm, whether they're sensor, I don't know.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Probably a hunting.
That's a whole separate thing. We've had balancing done as well, right? A separate balancer. There's a commissioning system, and then there's a balancer. And I don't think they don't believe that it's a balancer issue. They believe it's more in mind with the controls.
So more to come.
More to come. I just want to give you an update on.
Thank you. If you're sweating in the library, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
So if you're sweating in the library, we're sorry, we're working.
Yeah, well, there was some humidity issues that we had going on that we were worried about, and that's one of the things that we tried to resolve with us. Congressional budget appropriations, we submitted 3 budget appropriation requests for the recreation center for the 2027 regular fiscal year. I don't know where they'll go, but we're worth a shot. We got an announcement from a bunch of them, like, you know, like, hey, now's the time to submit, so we did. We also put in, Craig did, put in for $100,000 request to fund police technology improvement. That would be the tasers, body worn cameras, in-car cameras, but that technology we have is all getting old.
Right. Thank you. One executive item there and now zoning hearing. I did not see anything that struck a chord with me. If anyone has anything.
Please skip the
No.
bill.
Oh, sorry, I always skip the bills. How's our water issue? You're running. All right. Seeing any questions on bill listing? Okay, zoning hearing. I have no questions. Recycling report. You actually kind of gave a semi-recycling report earlier, so thank you. The grant.
Yeah, we want to apply for a grant for a new recycling collection vehicle.
So granted.
So granted. Process.
Well, it would be nice because those are not cheap. They are to the tune of, what is it,
I would say this.
300K?
You know, Beth was here tonight talking about unfunded mandates, which we have a million of them. And they go from everything from the right to know law to the stormwater, it's very expensive. The recycling program is one of the programs that actually has a dedicated funding source to help fund some of these things. Now, over the years, as equipment has gotten more expensive, but the fee that's charged to fund those programs hasn't gone up. So like they're funding less and less.
Their proportion is getting lower.
Yes. But it's something to help out and you try to be in a position to buy this equipment by putting a very small, you prorate the operating life of the equipment in your revenue service fee, so you get some money every year to pay for this stuff. So it's not going to be an impact on next year's budget if we do that.
Are we any closer to the feasibility idea of this electric?
No, but the emission standard for diesel equipment is getting more stringent, so it's gonna add on to the vehicle going forward. So there's just, it's not there.
These are big trash and put it in the plus possible.
It's steam, now.
We covered everything in the EAC. Sounds like appreciate the presentation, appreciate someone volunteering to do that program, and hopefully receive a new member to the volunteer corps. No Stigma, No Shame Day. Sounds like we'll make an announcement. We've already dedicated that third Saturday of April each year as No Stigma, No Shame Day. So we'll see some of members of STOAC on Wednesday.
Yeah, if they're okay, they like to go first. on
Of
Wednesday.
course.
They're gonna have the students here.
Sure.
We do a little fun and all different now.
Oh, that's wonderful. And a reminder that Drug Take Back Day on April 25th as well to dispose. All right. Police commendations, also going to be Wednesday, so we'll have STOAC first and the police commendations to follow. We're also going to make an announcement, and Beth, I should credit Beth for working really hard on a wonderful presentation to support domestic violence survivors. I think that's going to be excellent and piggybacks nicely on the presentation we did at the Public Safety Forum that occurred last month, and which was excellent, I thought. Just good work. And forget that if it's not in here, I just want to comment that they did a really good job. There was a reasonable turnout of folks. A number of us were there. Probably 30. Yeah, I mean, 20, it's 20 plus, or maybe in the 20, or maybe in the 20 range, which I feel is pretty good. And we tried to promote this event, tried to promote the other ones. So for first turnout, it was about cyber crimes and fraud, and actually had really good salient advice for the everyday person, I thought, that you wouldn't think. So, and great to give an opportunity for our officers to express their interest in leadership as well. So thanks for hosting it.
Yeah, I was really impressed with some of the developments. That I know. I also think we did. It seems to me for a lot of other a lot of things coming share concerns.
conference to discuss with the department. With all this, subsidies.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's important.
Hey, what is another, they expressed some concern about sharing publicly or the recording. I don't know what public assessment, but it was great.
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be great if they could do our,
Well, what we were just asking, like, is there? I think you have PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
Is there a
post.
portion of the PowerPoint presentation that could be made
available.
publicly available?
Yeah, there's certain things they want to struggle out. Right. But
Do
it was at a public meeting.
Yeah, sure. Do we have a webpage for the public safety forum?
Like news and announcements, like it shows up under the calendar and it shows up as a news article.
Maybe it'd be nice to have one and that has the resources from anything that comes out, that, you know, the police could use to link to the appropriate resources.
I'll tell you, I mean, organically, I ended about 90 minutes. And it kind of set the stage that it would be 80 minutes, but it was engaging. Like, I think people would really catch on to the topic itself. And itself to be pretty interesting.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the, new files web page now, there's a whole community engagement section, and so there's different pages for drug take back initiative and national.
That makes a logical location for it. Perfect. And that way we could just maybe public safety forum resources. How about that? That way we always have a resource page. And we can give a home for the domestic violence survivor tools. Maybe we can think about what the best location for that is. If it's that or somewhere else. Great. The recreation center. Did I skip anything? Okay. The geotechnical engineering seems like the was it 21K is what I saw somewhere along the way. And did we talk about that earlier? Yeah. We talked about it. Like, when was that? Last year? Was that an hour ago? Okay, so we're good with that. AEDs, more to come, sounds like, but it seems like Jim Murphy is on the case. The Cisco Park pedestrian bridge. I don't think there's any issue of closing up the bridge for some Girl Scouts to use it for that time on, what date is that?
To be determined.
To be determined. All right. Well, if anyone wants to go see Girl Scouts doing something cool on the bridge, there they go. You'll be there yourself. Highway resurfacing program. All right, go for it, Mike.
Sure. So this is our 2026 highway servicing program. We received 2 bids. The low bid came from Glasgow Incorporated. It was within budget. They have about a $12,025 savings. So our recommendation would be to award the Glasgow.
Do we often basically always go with Glasgow? Is that about right? Or is
If
it?
they're a little bit or we will, but it's
I
not-
thought it was last year.
It was.
Yeah.
Last year, but it's been that Marcy in years past, we have teaching about treatment,
So it's been all over.
highway materials, and stuff.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, just coincidence. Although I think Glasgow is sort of focused on this type of work nowadays. They're not doing a whole lot of site construction work any longer, or major highway construction. Of they were one of the companies that did the 309 in partnership with Buckley, the bridge company. But I don't think they get involved in that kind of stuff. I think that only the winding down and this is kind of like what they're doing now.
Great. We briefly spoke about Terminal Ave. It just seems like the bid's going out. Went out today, right? Was it today?
They were looking up. Yeah.
This morning at
Yeah.
10 a.m. So all there is to report there. We will authorize, so we already did. Okay, we can act the ordinance on Wednesday.
Correct.
This is for streets and sidewalks to be sure that next year, if you're not plowing your sidewalks, or we're not shoveling your sidewalks, that the penalty increases from $15 a day to potentially a maximum of $500.
Yeah, and just to understand, we still will go around and give a a notice and say, look, you need to clear this within 24 hours. So they'll get that. And then if they don't do it, then we'll go back. And then that's when we issue the citation. But again, like you asked the question of that, what happens if we don't do our pollution reduction plan? The state doesn't want to fine us. They want us to do the work. We don't want to fine them. We want them to do the sidewalk because that's how the people get to school. That's how
Yeah,
Brendan walks down.
this is just for Brendan maybe, it's gonna be that. But it's a true, yeah, it's a true fine of last resort. No one wants that to happen. Just for flagrant violations, basically. So. All right, we also then, the next item we have is the presentation that we received by Tim Woodrow and Beth Bueller, and no issue, it seems like, to be sure to do the appropriate billing for them as well. And
There's a portion of that that's a rain garden. Yeah, I don't know when there's a rain garden.
yeah, okay.
It's not wet all the time, but there's a portion that'll grow in as a rain garden. It's planted to be a rain garden, so it looks. Right now, it's just awful, exactly like grass, just like all those wild things look awful. There's a tree. Yeah. So does it look like we cut it or does it look like they cut it? Because there's a section of it where the rain garden is that is our responsibility. We have to pick up that.
Let's check to be sure the rain garden lives.
Yeah.
All right, and then I believe finally, but for our executive item, we have an Arbor Day announcement. Also Saturday, April 25th, we're giving away trees also, and like we have done recently, it will be a lottery as opposed to first come, first serve, which has been successful. So if you want a tree for Arbor Day, enter the lottery, which opens, let's see, what date is that? You have to enter the lot, you have to register by Friday, April 10th. And you can register through Friday, April 17th for the chance to receive the free tree. And then you will go and retrieve your tree from the Arbor Day celebration, is my recollection.
Peter, do that?
Yep. That's what you heard, right?
That's right, they decided a fall fiesta sugar maple tree. Was that his personal choice? Was it really? Well, it concludes our formal agenda items. Before we move into executive, technically we're reopening the public comment. There's no one in this room. I'm sorry for those on Zoom.
I do have.
Oh, just kidding. We have a few.
Sorry, I have two things. One is the meeting, one of the executive. Resolution accepting a deed of dedication for a portion of East Mill Road. We got a call from the old, I guess it was the original clubhouse for Sunnyville Golf Club on Mill Road. It was subdivided back in the late 1990s. You'll see that they're building a garage on the original dwelling right now. They're selling the other portion. As part of that subdivision, they were required to dedicate a portion of the Mill Road right away to the township. And while it's under ownership of a single owner right now, we wanted to get that before it becomes complicated and it goes into two separate, owners. So we have a resolution, it's in your folder, to accept that portion of East Mill Road right away. That we'd like to get considered accepted.
Great. And the other item is executive. Otherwise, I will accept the motion to adjourn. All right, so thank you, everyone who attended on Zoom. We'll be moving to discuss one executive item. We won't be back. Thank you.
Thanks,